Bonjour à tous and welcome to another video. Today we're taking a little break from grammar. Don't worry, we'll go back to grammar very soon. But today I want to talk to you about books. Books have played an instrumental role in my acquisition of French and indeed other languages. And with back to school, even if it's just virtual school, just around the corner, some of you might be looking for some books to help you improve your French. So today I'm going to be talking to you about some of the books that I would recommend for French learning and indeed learning other languages as well. Now, as it happens, I don't actually have copies of these books. In some cases, they're books that I have copies of for other languages, and in other cases, they are books that I used to use at school but have since got rid of. However, with the magic of the internet, I'm going to be showing you samples and talking through some of the features that I think make them worth buying. Also, stick around to the end of this video because I have some exciting deals for you. But first of all, let's start with reading books. When it comes to reading, I've never really been a fan of using novels to improve your spoken French. Literary French and spoken French are completely different, in the same way that literary English and spoken English are completely different. Now, don't get me wrong, literature can be a great way to study culture and art, but as far as I'm concerned, it's not a great way of improving your everyday vocabulary. Imagine if someone used Agatha Christie to learn English. They'd sound beautifully poetic, but they'd also sound really, really weird. So please don't do the same thing in French. Instead, I recommend that you read graded readers and short stories designed for people learning French. Yes, it's a little bit less authentic, but you will make so much more progress with something written for learners. And recently I came across short stories in French by Richard Simcott and Ollie Richards. While the layout is very much like a novel, the style certainly isn't. For example, in reporting speech, they don't use the simple past as you would in a novel, and instead use the much more useful present tense. You'll also see that many of the words are in bold. These are words that they think maybe you don't already know or that are important to you, and I think this is really, really important. When you read a text, you can be bombarded with lots and lots of new vocabulary, especially as a beginner, and it's never a good idea to try to learn all of those words. Instead, it's best to focus on those which you think are most useful. But sometimes, of course, it's not entirely clear which ones are most useful, and so it's nice to have a bit of a guide as is offered in this book. They also put a short summary at the end of each story to make sure that you have understood the main gist, and they also put some questions as well, not necessarily to test you, but just to make sure that you've understood the most important information. I think this is a really nicely laid out book, and it's one that I would definitely use if I were a beginner in French, or indeed any other language. So the next book that I want to bring to your attention is Mot à Mot. Now this one is specifically designed for A-level students, so for those of you outside of the UK, A-levels are qualifications that UK students study between the ages of 17 and 18. So these are people who have chosen to study French at a slightly higher level. However, I don't think you specifically need to be an A-level student to use this book. You could be studying any international equivalent, or indeed just studying French for your own interest. Some of the vocabulary is perhaps a little bit too formal for everyday speech, but there is some really nice topic-based vocabulary in there. So if you are going for a slightly higher level of French, I think this book is really, really useful. I used this one at school. I took a copy out of the library, so I don't have my own copy, but I found it really, really useful for structuring my essays, structuring my spoken exams, but also just learning that vocabulary that no other textbook was going to teach me. So this one's really, really nice. It's really, really simple, but also invaluable for anyone studying French. I will also mention, for any of those studying languages other than French, there are some versions of this book in other languages too, but of course they're not called mot à mot. So the Italian version will be parola per parola, the Spanish version palabra por palabra, the German version Wort für Wort, I guess, and possibly others as well. So if you're interested in other languages, then they're definitely worth searching for. Next, I would like to recommend to you a dictionary. Now, of course, there are many bilingual dictionaries out there, some of them apps, some of them paper dictionaries, but the paper dictionary that I would recommend to you is the Collins Dictionary and Grammar. Now, once again, I don't actually have a copy of this in French, but I do have an Italian copy, a German copy, a Chinese copy, and a Latin copy. So suffice it to say that I really like these dictionaries. The reason that I like them so much is because I find that they have the perfect balance of concision and detail. So yes, there are lots and lots of words, yes, there are lots and lots of examples and explanations, but at the same time, you're not overwhelmed with too much. I find it's just a really nice, happy medium. Some dictionaries can just completely overwhelm you with way too much detail, and I find that Collins finds that balance really nicely. They also have a couple of other cool details as well. So for example, words that they consider important are marked with a little star, which I think is nice. And also they have some cultural explanations in here as well. So for example, here we have the entry for académie, which of course means academy, but then there's also this little grey box which explains the Académie Française, which of course just doesn't exist in English. So it's details like that which I think set this dictionary apart. The other thing, of course, is that it has an entire grammar section. Now, I don't necessarily think the grammar section can replace a dedicated grammar book. I think if you are studying grammar, it's probably a good idea to get a separate grammar book. But again, if you're looking for some concision, I think the section of this dictionary that deals with grammar is really good. The explanations are sufficiently detailed, but at the same time, not too much that you get confused. Plus, it's laid out in a really nice way where the explanation is on the left-hand page and then the examples are on the right-hand page. This has inspired my own writing, which we shall say no more about for now. If you're looking for a paper dictionary, go no further than the Collins Dictionary and Grammar, again available in more languages than just French. Next, I actually want to introduce you to a website where you can buy books. Now, you may well have already heard of Ape Books, but if not, oh my goodness, it's going to change your life. I have bought so many books from this website, especially when I was at university. You know, university textbooks can be very expensive, and sometimes it's worth a look on Ape Books to see if someone is selling a much cheaper copy. Now, of course, you're not always guaranteed to find the book that you want, but it's certainly a good place to look to check before you buy it brand new. So, as you can see here, I've had a search for French in general, and of course there are many books that we can buy for £2 or less. Now, you might be looking at some of these books thinking, yeah, but they were published in 1984, do they not have anything a little bit more up to date? Well, if you're looking for something which is a little bit newer, you can do an advanced search, which will allow you to search for things which were published more recently. So here I've done a search between 2010 and 2020. I think anything written in the last 10 years is probably going to serve you fairly well. And as you can see, we do get some slightly more modern results that come through. You'll notice here I found a copy of one of those CGP revision guides which are ubiquitous in the UK and essential for any student. So if you're buying a lot of those, the price can really add up. So it might be worth getting one on Ape Books if you can. Of course, sometimes they might not be in brand new condition, but you generally find that if it says it's in new or used condition, that it's perfectly usable. Remember, this is something that you're going to be using for 2 years of your life, and then you'll never think about it again. So of course it doesn't need to be in absolute pristine condition. We could also do a slightly more specific search. So for example, here I've searched A-level French, and you see we get some A-level books that you can use, including one that I think was used at my school, though I personally never used it myself. We can even have a look for some of the books that we've already seen. So for example, here I've searched for mot à mot, and if we scroll down a little bit, we'll see that there is indeed a copy of it. It may not be the newest copy, but again, you don't necessarily need the absolute newest copy. The one that was published 5, maybe even 10 years ago is perfectly usable. Lastly, I would like to add that this video is not sponsored by anyone, but I do have a couple of affiliate links for Ape Books in the description. This just means that if you go through those links, I get a little bit of commission on your purchase at no extra cost to you. So if you'd like to show support, but you don't have the financial means to do so, then I'd really appreciate it if you follow those links and buy your books through those. Finally, we have one that I'm really excited about, and that is the Routledge Colloquial French course. They do have courses available in other languages, but of course in this video we'll focus on the French version. This book has everything you need to improve your reading, your listening, and to a certain extent your grammar as well. It's one that I've used with my private students and is now one that I can recommend to you all. I love this book so much that I myself reached out to Routledge to see if I could offer my lovely viewers some kind of discount, and they have been nice enough to give me a code which will allow you to get 20% off. This lasts until February, so you've got plenty of time to get it. They recently had a summer sale, but that has now ended, so it's only you who get this wonderful promotion code. So if you go to buy any version of this book, be it the paperback version or the PDF version, and use the code PARA, P-A-R-A 20, you can get 20% off, and I am very excited. Have I mentioned that already? I'm not quite sure. But enough of that, let me take you through some of the wonderful features of this book. First of all of the audio, it's available online for both books 1 and 2. You can just listen to it for free. Wonderful. You can also have a sneak preview of the book online before you buy it. So as you can see here, the first unit, first of all, explains everything that you're going to go through in this unit, which is all the stuff that you really need, using être, talking about nationality, introducing yourself. Oh, it's wonderful. And then we of course have the conversation itself, which you can read and listen to at the same time. The wonderful thing about this audio, I think, is that it has a nice balance between being understandable but also kind of natural. In a lot of audio courses, they speak so slowly that it just isn't realistic at all. And when you go out into the real world, you realize that everyone speaks completely differently. This, I think, finds a nice compromise between the two. So you're not frustrated because it's way too difficult, but at the same time it does prepare you properly for real spoken French. So they have 2 books currently, 1 for beginners and 2 for people at a slightly higher level, so you can get to a good level with these 2 books. And it's also something that's quite nice to work through, so if you need that little bit of structure, then Colloquial French is a really good way to do something a little bit fun but at the same time very useful. Like I said, it's something that I recommend to my private students and sometimes work through with them, so I can do nothing but praise it. So once again, if you would like 20% off between now and February, then use my code PARA20, that's P-A-R-A 20, for 20% off any version of the book. Thank you very much, Routledge, for that code. Again, this video is not sponsored by them, and I was the one that reached out to them, but just because I'm very keen for people to buy it. So if you do that, that would be great for me. It would be great for my relationship with Routledge, and hopefully in the future I can do a little bit more. So because I don't want this video to be too long, I'm going to stop there. Of course, if you'd like to hear more books that I would recommend, then let me know and I'll do part 2 of this video. At some point I will get my hands on an actual copy of the Routledge book so I can do a full review of it, but at the minute I can't really do that. I've got to wait until other things have happened. It's all very complicated. But I will do a full review of that book. But like I said, if you want me to talk about other books, whether I have them or not, then I'm perfectly happy to do that. Plus, of course, if you have your own recommendations, please do put them in the comments. I'm sure other people would really love that. Thank you, of course, for watching. More grammar videos coming up in the very near future. And as always, à bientôt.